You got me? You back? Make sure you go.
I'm here, but give me 2 seconds. I'm
Okay,
here. I'm
take
here
your
with
time.
you. Give me
Take
two
your time.
seconds.
Take your time. We'll be back. I'm gonna be talking. We're about to have a great conversation. If you're not aware, this is Dynasty Ogun from L'Enchanteur fame. You guys gotta understand, like this woman's been working for I don't know how many years, easily over a decade, easily. Her and her sister Soul on just some of the most unique, beautiful, inspired, regal, like majestic items that you've ever seen. Garments, pieces, jewelry. She's got them lined up. This is behind the scenes process. I just want to keep this all in. I just want to keep it all in. I already
I'm
started
here with
recording.
you.
I'm keeping all of it.
All right, good. I'm here with
I
you.
want
I'm here
people to
with
get
you.
the full energy. See, now I can't
First
hear
of
you.
all,
Keep going. Can you hear me?
congratulations.
On what?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Why can't I hear you again?
What's going on again?
All right, bet. All right, I'm good. I'm here.
You hear me?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you're good.
Good, good.
All right, we finally got it.
How you living?
I'm I'm good. I'm feeling good.
Good,
Happy.
good.
I'm saying just still trying to elevate and grow and get to a better place. So we all grown. We all out here trying to go better to the next level. But I feel good. I feel like I'm supposed to feel. It's been a long time coming. Just want to say congratulations.
Lovely,
You all
lovely.
work. Black is king. You and Soul out here shining. Beyonce sees what's going on. Erica Badu sees what's going on. Miss Lauryn Hill sees what's going on. But it was just a big.
Finally.
I mean, finally, after a decade plus of grinding, y'all putting out all this great work, this one of a kind, singular jewelry and attire, just to see you guys just in that space, it felt so right. It felt so elevated because you guys always been making that sort of Afro-futuristic, regal, back to the ancestral roots, gems and garments. It just felt so right. It felt powerful. That's how your stuff always makes me feel powerful from day one. Different, connected to nature, connected to spirituality, connected to the essence. And you guys have a way of being able to take all that creative force and translate it into things that we can wear and hold and like adorn ourselves with. It feels like what our kings would be wearing back in the day, and the kings of the future will be wearing. So I just want to say thank you. I know it's not easy. It don't.
And I want to say thank you. I'd like to say thank you. I'd like to take a moment to thank you as well, because I've always loved your work and the style and the way in which you do your work. It's always been very unique to me and just personal. And I love that. And I love the fact that you make your work so personal and even in the span or we don't get to speak as long, I feel like we're still on a journey together.
Absolutely.
That personal atmosphere. And I want to congratulate you on SHEREN Volume 2. Because I know you did Volume 1. It was more of a where is it? I have it. I have it real close by. I wanted to pull it out.
Little do people know, like you and my mom got the same name.
I know. That's my government. That's the
government, but nobody needs to know that.
I mean, people can know that. I love that name. I love that aspect of me. And I feel like people can know that. They can know all these things because I feel like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not know that? Yeah, and the way in which you pronounce it, the way in which you spell it. It's spelled so differently from mine, but you pronounce it exactly. You spell it exactly, almost how I feel it's pronounced. Like SHEREN. Because I know you're people Yardi.
Yeah, right? My mom, her name, how's it spelled? SHERRON. O-N, it's like Ron. But you know how like it just gets blurred, so it gets Yardi like, so SHEREN.
Yeah, I'm SHARRON. I'm ROON.
You guys are the exact same.
Yeah, my mom's did the double R.
Yeah,
she did the Ron.
Same way. My mom's double RON. So exactly.
You already know.
Yeah, man, but so what you been getting into? What you been working on? How's life?
Life has been great. I just been working on myself. And as I'm always working on myself, I'm working on my art in the way in which I want to convey what I've learned and share it. It's just been just humbling. The past year has been really humbling. It's been a time to really get interdimensional or working on the inner, and there's no way around it. For me, I think that there hasn't been a way around it for people. And for me, it's just been, it's been just closer to home. Just an opportunity to really utilize what I've been learning and seeing how it works for me. I think that's been the time now. It's been like all this shit that I've been learning, boom, boom. How can I put that into action? Yeah. And how have I been putting it into action?
Yeah, and it's so important because I think like you and So in particular, you guys have such a very like human, like spiritual, refined, mystical, knowledge-based way of looking at the world that a lot of people don't tap into nowadays. So when you say you're learning, and I'm just seeing the things that is coming from that learning, like what are some of the things that you're getting into? What are you like? What are you looking at? What are you reading? Like, just what are you creating? You like you're not like someone who's just, I'm on Instagram. I saw a nice, I saw a garment. I saw a color. I'm like I feel like you're just in the soil of the earth and just finding stuff. So like, where do you get your inspiration from? I've always wanted to ask you that. Like, where do you get your inspiration? Is it reading? Is it things that you see? Is it going to certain places? Is it traveling?
It is everything you just said and more. It's traveling between, let's say, my house and my parents' house.
Yeah.
And I see some cat on the train, and it's usually the cats they don't have the most money. They're the best dressed to me. They're usually like the homeless cats, actually. The garbs, and you can see underneath because there's so many layers. They're like onions. Mm-hmm. So when I'm observing them, I'm looking at them like, oh, I'm peeling back on what I'm seeing. So there's usually layers and shit like fucking blazers, and then underneath the blazers another shirt and a scarf, and then cardigan. That should go on.
And just fly ass colors and just things that
something you go on. Together, so I think inspiration. I've come accustomed to saying that inspiration comes from whoever the universe is presenting to me as symbols. It's funny because I've lately been I've been just listening to a lot of it's funny because I've always found myself as more down here as an entity. I always found myself like more out there. Mm-hmm. And the work I felt that I've had to work on is finding myself here and planted, meaning appreciating my humanity. Mm-hmm. And I think that I find it fun and beautiful that you're like, the human aspect and all these things. And I'm like, for me, I've always been extra. Like, oh my God, we're from the future and shit. We're the giants. We're the gods. Da-da-da. That's our lingo. That's the way we like to convey the work.
Keep talking about
and it. And it's so funny? It's so matter-of-factly. It's so, that's a matter of fact. However, there's so much that goes on in the world. It's like, how do you maintain your grounding, your square in the world, in your personal life? So I'm like, we're the gods, but I'm dealing with mad human shit. So I'm like, I'm the god, but, rent is due. My stomach hurts. Should I have eaten the mac and cheese? Oh my God, should I be vegan now? These are...
But I feel you.
Right now, I'm about to roll up,
Yeah, do you?
Burn this shit. Cause, damn, where's you at? Oh, do that. So it's like
I'm just trying to understand.
Humanity for me has grown so beautifully and so thick that I've appreciated. I've when you're like, what are you learning? I'm learning about my human self.
Mm-hmm. Because you got your God self down.
I'm learning. Can you hear me?
I hear you. You're good.
I don't know why it keeps doing that.
I hear you.
It keeps speaker. What's going on? Say something. Say hey.
Hey, what's up? I hear you. Good.
Yeah. Anyway, so what have I been learning? I've been learning to appreciate humanity. Mm-hmm. I think, and then in all its aspects. Meaning, I've been learning that consciousness and beauty and renouncing things doesn't have to equate to a concept of struggling. If that makes sense. I think that's what I've been learning. I've been learning abundance in all its aspects. If I can just like put it out there. And then learning that abundance means to me, it means accepting everything as it all is. So humanity, where I want to be spiritually, where I want to be spiritually in humanity or taking part in humanity. I think, you know, if it was all like this whole spiritual shit, we wouldn't be having this interview in the first place. So I think in the past 10 years, what I've come to learn is to come to myself a little bit, like be aware of where I'm at. So being present, it to me is accepting everything as it is. So like, spiritual aspect of self, and the mortal concept of self, the mortal concept of self, and the spiritual being of self. So, you know, I think, yeah, something like that.
The spiritual being of self. Like, how do you see yourself as a spirit?
How do I see myself as a spirit?
Yeah.
I've never really seen myself as a spirit. Or how do I see myself as one? I've always
When you think
looked at.
When you think about like you and who you are, whether on this plane or in another plane, like what do you think you mean as a person? Like, are you a vessel? Are you a conduit? Are you a connector?
I'm a master learner.
Master.
I'm a master student. I'm a master student.
But I feel like you teach a lot, though. You teach.
Huh?
I feel like you're a student, but you also teach.
So I think that's what, for me, if that's anything, that's what a master student is. I'm a master at learning.
Yep.
And through learning, I'm always available to teach what I've learned, because I'm always constantly challenging what I've learned. And I think that's a master student.
Yeah.
So for me to just say, like, you know, I can teach. I think that might be my ego too. Because it's funny how the ego works. I can look at like, I'm being humble and shit. You know, I'm humble. Like, you know, I don't, maybe I'm a teacher, and I can be like, you know, I'm dropping dimes and shit. And I feel like I do through my work. How I feel like the pinpoint though, I think that sometimes I stray away when I hear that next to me, because I probably don't feel like I want the responsibility of that. I prefer the responsibility of learning than the responsibility of teaching.
I got you. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know?
You feel more comfortable.
So if in the most direct thing I can say, it would be that. Like, I love to be a learner, and I love to teach, and I love to show. And this is probably, you know, it's so funny. I've been watching mad kung fu films lately. Mad kung fu films. Oh my God, mad kung fu films. Yeah.
What you been getting? What you been getting from them? The kung fu films. Because I see that in your work. So like,
it's been coming. Well, one thing has been going back and forth is like a lot of teacher master, Sifu, like a lot of like learning and, you know, unlearning, being greater than knowing your place, you know, in a respectful way. So I've been getting a lot of that. I've been getting a lot of just like storylines that probably is like odd, but real good. It's more about like the way stories are being told. But what I've been getting from that is just a lot of like people who practice a certain art form in a direct way. And then there's a lot of like, I found that when I watch things that I used to watch when I was younger, when I watch it now, there's a lot more information that I take in. So a lot more spiritual concepts that I pay attention to throughout the dialogue and throughout the storyline of, you know, like movies, TV shows, cartoons, you know, anything that really has like a really good storyline. There's always something like really dope and in depth that's going on.
Do you think you find yourself going back to a lot of things from like childhood and referencing them now in adulthood in your work a lot?
Always.
Always.
Always. I'm always doing that. That's constant.
How
I
much
think that.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, cut you off. I was listening.
Oh, no worries. No, what are you saying?
No, I was gonna say, I was like, I wonder, like, if all those things that you've taken from your child that you've kept in your adulthood, is that like just speaking to how essentially those things were and connected you were to those things, like kung fu movies? I remember watching them when I was younger with all my cousins, and then somehow like I grew out of it, but I always loved them. And the fact that you still go back to them just proves like
I always have a hook on them. I always grab it, always. Like, and it's funny because I get a lot of comments like, "You mad nostalgic?" And I'm like, I am. I can be very nostalgic. And it's funny because nostalgia, I just watched a movie from the 80s, and then I watched another part of the movie that was another movie from the 2000s that was connected to the movie from the 80s. And it was such a thread. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure the person who made the new movie connected to the older movie. And I always want to find out if there's a thread, meaning if there's something connected. And not connected like I feel so connected to it. I mean, like, really, like, is there a point that's connected here, that's connected there? And how they connect with one another and what that actually means. How is it unfolding? How is the story being told? So I think that a really great way that I've been able to do that is really tapping into like childhood aspects of myself, ways in which I can pull storylines that I've seen before, and then when I've come or when it's been reintroduced in a certain type of way, I'm able to be like, well, wow, I remember when I saw this as a kid and what this meant to me then, and I can see what this means now. And then I can also be like, well, what it means to me. So then I can take myself out of it emotionally. And then I can look at it flat and not necessarily have so much attachment to what it meant to me. And even though it meant something to me, that's why I'm able to grab it. That's why I'm able to say this is part of my childhood. I can be like, well, wow, I've watched this movie 1,000 times. And every single time I've watched it, it's meant something else. Meaning that what it's meant to me emotionally, it can be wider than me or bigger than me.
Yeah.
I've
only had like a couple of things like that, like movie-wise, where I've watched like over the course of my life. It's really only been, and even still I wasn't that young, it's really only been like The Matrix and the movie Casino with Robert De Niro. There's just something about the elegance, the opulence, that it in a weird way, like it was what I was imagining my future life to be. My life hasn't yet caught up to that yet. So, but there's still this feeling of like trying to capture what I was attracted to at a young age when I first saw it in my present moment, whether that be the elegance, the opulence, the adulthood, the new spaces. There was just something glamorous or, I don't know, attractive about seeing Las Vegas in the 70s when they showed it in Casino, or seeing this imagined world called The Matrix that I think we're all trying to recreate.
Matrix is great. I love Matrix. When did Matrix come out? Matrix came out 99?
I think it was 99, like right before Y2K.
Well, Matrix came out in 99. There was so many movies that impacted me. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I can ask you a question. How many siblings do you have?
I got a lot of half siblings. I got a sister.
Half siblings. But how many siblings did you have in your household?
Half siblings, they're in half, but it's just like I have my.
How many were with you in the household?
That's what I'm saying. Like my sister was the one that was in the household, but I I don't know how many total, but probably like another 4 or so.
Hmm.
Dad had 2 other children. Then we had my sisters from my mother, and then my step pops. I still count those. Step pops has a bunch of sons that were around when I was growing up. So there's a lot, but I'll probably say directly between my mother and my father 4. And I only grew up with my.
Okay, so
And
I
she's
guess I
only,
can
yeah,
like did you interact with them a lot?
she was 10 years younger than me. That's the thing about it. So like when I'm 20, she's 10. So we've interacted
And
a
you
lot
were
more.
older.
Yeah, and I was the older one, so we interacted a lot more as she grew up. But it's not really something. It's not too much to talk to. You know, like when you're 20 and your sister's 10, she's just like another child. She's like almost like your child. And
Yeah, I was about to say. See, the difference is that you would be my older, like my older sister, who Sol and I got almost all of our juice and shit from.
yeah,
She was 10 years older than us. You know what I'm saying? We're the youngest out the crew, and we're the youngest out of 6. So there was like a lot of sibling and a lot of like cool New York shit learning that I was learning while I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. So I was growing up with people who had come from the 70s and 80s,
yeah.
and they were filling us in on what was happening. We were watching. So I think that played and plays a lot of roles in it. So when you're like, well, you know, like my movies are casino and shit because they're like a lot of newer. I was the first one of the Last Dragon is like one of the
Oh,
best movies, right?
for sure.
Then there's Dance Hall Queen.
Of course. Oh, come on, come on. You talking to Jamaican? You know, of course, Dance Like Queen.
See,
That was
these movies for me,
Nelly.
they're,
Come
they're,
on.
they're, they're top 5. The Dance Hall Queen is top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to America, top 5. I love
That's cool.
Casino and I love those movies. However, because we're in the same age group, but because we're the same age,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't or you didn't have the older sibling
Yeah, you got an old soul.
filling you in.
Mm-hmm.
I, I think that plays a major role in how I developed being younger and having older siblings. Because if I was older and I was born in time, I remember growing up and seeing mad shit on the wall. I'm like, you know, being 5, like, what is all this? You know, I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking about now, like, what does all this mean? Like, they got these rappers and shit, Word Up Magazine, like, for real, you know? And I'm a toddler in their adolescence growing through and they're discovering themselves. So when we were discovering ourselves, we were what, in the 90s and whatnot, discovering who we were. And then we was trying to, you know, I don't have any younger siblings and I don't also have that responsibility. So you look at them like, that's a kid, you know, they're going, you know, I'm gonna pick them up and, you know, it's a different level of understanding between learner and teacher. So that's why I always look at like master student,
That makes
because
perfect
I've always been learning from my older siblings. I've always been I took that in, and it's funny because I think that there's a blessing and there's a responsibility. I don't ever look at things as like curses. I look at things more as like blessing or responsibility or like learning. To a blessing or responsibility for me as a younger sibling is, you know, you take a lot from the world is given to you really early on. So I'm young and I'm coming into it and they're like, this is how our clan is set up. You in it, you know, it's like being born into a game. You know, your younger sibling is like Pacquiao. You're like, this is what we doing. This is what we've been doing. Yeah, I just got here.
Exactly.
You're going to do what we doing. You know, so
That's how it went. That's how it went.
So there's a level of but I always think about deeply spiritual connection. So I'm like, well, I chose these motherfuckers.
And what I'm realizing, it's like, it's not just one thing with you. It's everything. It's how you feel in a day to day. It's the things that you're consuming, the things that you're reading, the things that you're seeing. You know, it's funny. I started a conversation. I thought it was going to be one or two things that got you and soul to like the level that you guys are at. But what I'm realizing is it's everything. It's not even just the present. It's everything from the past. It's everything from the future. It's the spiritual plane. It's the physical plane. I mean, that's the reason why your work and the things that you do look so different and so
like all happening right now.
Yes, I'm getting this. It's really like, it really is.
And
that
it's random shit.
It's not
It's random shit. There's so much going on in the world right now that's so intriguing to me. I think that there's a lot going on. People are so really concerned about the presidential election and all this stuff that's going on. And I be there with my people.
Yeah.
And I'm also on my square because I feel like this has happened before. And the thing I sometimes, it's funny, like this movie that I watched yesterday, they were talking about, it dealt with AIs, artificial intelligent cats. And I've been watching it as research for this project that I'm working on with this other artist. And so AIs, and these AIs, they're emotionally underdeveloped. Okay. And the thing about them is that their maker gave them what they said, something to cushion their emotions, meaning something to help them develop their emotions. And you know what it is? It's memories. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. Fascinating that what they're using to help these entities is memories. And sometimes what that can do with other people is make them fucking psycho. Memories. Things that bind you.
You know what's interesting about that you say that? It's like it's so much of our reality of who we think we are. Think about it. If tomorrow you woke up and you didn't remember who the hell you were because you didn't have your memories, you could technically, one, not even be a person or not even know anything about yourself, but it's like your whole life would be erased. It's funny how much of ourselves is what we just remember and imagine ourselves to be in the present.
And how we make that so real to us. I like memory because I like knowing the whole story. And I think memory helps with that. I think, we can live our lives as if it's new. However, memory isn't what it is for no reason. I think it's just as important as breathing. I don't know. And I think, what did you say to me? You said it was like all things. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm saying like, the election and things is going on. I think I was like, this happened before. We were really riled up and hyped up and it pulled at our energy. And I'm always aware of how my energy is being tugged at. Where my energy is moving, how it's being moved, and how it benefits myself, and then benefits the people closer, and then benefits. It has to go like that. So the way that the work is being developed or the way the work is displayed is always displayed as something of a helpful reminder or a helpful aid. So, for example, I've been getting a lot of love for these shirts that we've been doing, called like the respiratory shirts. We call them the LE respiratory system shirts. And that came that started even before people was on lockdown and shit. It started before that. And then it started developing into a healthy, I want to stray away from the word response, but a healthy antidote to what was happening in the scenes. There was mad shit going on. So many things going on. You have a man being choked to death in public, talking about breathing, and then we deal with a pandemic that deals with our breath. So I'm like, all right, boom.
Really good.
Then, as a response to what we sometimes overreact in response and think this is the wisest, react with, I can't breathe. And what I personally felt like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to get somebody's attention? What is that about? So I'm like, all right. Saying that we can't breathe, to me, I don't think that's going to help. So as I'm working, as I'm writing, as spring is blooming and we start to see a lot of things that deal with the higher volume of oxygen, meaning that, melanin is like most popping when the warmer weather arrives. And it's not that it's not popping when it's colder, it's not as out there. What I've come to understand is that we start to pull in a lot of information, and what we're supposed to do in these times when it starts to get colder is we're supposed to gain information, and then we activate the information, and then during this warmer winters we push it out there. That's why I personally think this mad shit always going on when it's about to be spring. It's always when it's about to be spring. It's always during the equinox. It's always when it's like about to turn. always when the weather's about to change, something crazy happens.
It's like a release or something, right?
Listen, so-called Corona, but they're trying to say it started the 19th. It started in 2019. That was during wintertime, like November, October. That was during the winter equinox. That was changing and shifting. Then, as we're about to get out of containment for being in there for 3 months, starting in March, when spring was about to start, then summer's about to start, and then in May, then George Floyd would. Come on. Then during the summertime, then we get a whole bunch of forest fires. This is just in 2020. And then everybody's mad at 2020, like, throw the whole of 2020 away. Throw it in. I'm like, no, keep it. This is one of the most important years of our life.
Expand on that. Explain why it's the most important year of our lives. Because, I mean, you're already hitting the tune, you're already hitting the note on the respiratory stuff. It's been a lot of attacks on breathing. It's been a lot of attacks on breath, right? So you got that. That's there, right? You caught that energy. You captured that before it even started really happening. So talk about why you think this year, from your perspective, is an important one. What do you think we should be holding on to, paying attention to, and receiving? I want to end on that note. Like, take your time, but I want to get these jewels from you. Like, what are you feeling?
I think, I don't even think. I think the ancestors is telling me, because this is also like really about like taking in all your peoples that's been around you, all the peoples in the past prior years that's passed on, that's been sharing information. You take that, so you get respected. When I say like what I think, but what I think, I be meditating to control what I think, right? So what I do is like what I'm sharing is that it's about exposure. It's about really seeing yourself for who you are, or for what it is that you are. Meaning, all the things you say you don't like about somebody else, pay attention to that.
So that's what you think this year is about? It's about like exposure, revealing yourself?
It's always about revealing yourself, but I think it's about revealing ourselves to another degree.
Another degree.
It's always about revealing stuff, and it's about really taking power and understanding what you are on all levels. I think that what I've seen from so many of us in positive ways is like we're all like really starting to master our manifestation.
That's a fact.
Right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep. See, that's what I'm talking about. You be dropping the jewels, and I don't like you're not dropping jewels. But that's what it is. This 2020 has been about mastering your manifestation. Because it really truly feels like this year, more than any year that I can remember, the things that you think is going to happen, the things that you think you are, the essence and the things that you're feeling, they're really coming to fruition. So you really got to be mindful of the things that you're trying to manifest. Because
you have to understand in the dialogue of yourself. It's about, like I said, exposure. So, it's funny because when you sometimes hear the word, like, who's going to expose me? I'm like, you are.
Yeah.
You're going to expose yourself.
It's been a year of clarity for sure.
The year's about you exposing yourself. So the year's about you, whatever that saying, whatever men thinketh, that is what he is, or whatever you think you are, that's what it's about. And so when I say, so going back to like what you think somebody else is, check that, because that is exposing you to what you are. So if you feel like, I don't like how she talked too much. Okay. Do you talk too little? Have you not been speaking up for yourself? You know what I'm saying? Is that why this person who speaks too much makes you uncomfortable? They make you uncomfortable because they're saying things that you wish you can say. That's what it's about. It's not about, so that's what I'm going back into, because elections and stuff is really a time for people to really talk shit. Everybody's been talking shit like, Trump's a piece of shit. I'm like, okay, we know that. I mean, like, why is it that we're so hung up on that? We know that as a fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I think it's just like you said.
What now?
It's like a year of like as you said, internal dialogue. It's a year of reflections, almost in a way, like a mirroring.
Yeah,
What are you either getting or not
it's a
getting?
major reflection because
Mhm.
how old are you now?
I'm 32.
32.
I'm a
So
baby
you,
before. Although
I mean, no, you 88, right?
88, exactly. Infinity,
I
infinity.
like 88. They got a snake. No, you had a dragon.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, I gotta look at
You had a dragon in Chinese astrology.
that.
You
Okay,
the dragon. 88.
I feel that.
I'm not for 88s.
I like a
I like.
snake way better than I like a dragon way better than a snake. To be honest with
I
you.
mean, snake is really interesting because snakes are one of the. It's funny and pull back. So like I'll be following like certain like pages and stuff, and they said like really things that like always. I don't know if it's the algorithm right now because everything you say right now will be pulling up,
Yeah, exactly.
and I don't know. I don't know if we're the puppeteer of the puppets. I think that's the joke of life.
Yeah.
So I'm like, algorithm talking shit like, oh my god, they're listening to me. I'm like, well, I was talking about it anyway.
Yeah.
It's the fun. It's the way the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about snakes is snakes are one of the interesting original symbols that humanity,
That's true.
meaning like regular niggas, when I say humanity, has dealt with. And in snakes and serpents, anything that no shade whiteness says and it comes into like a saying, I kind of like usually retract. So if it's like snakes in the grass, I'm like would the niggas come up with that? Because if we did, I don't know, I gotta do more research, but I don't know if we did. And if we didn't, then it sounds like they're throwing dirt on a nigga name. I don't know. I'm really wary about sayings these
Mm-hmm.
days and the things, and so like, so I'm saying that because anyway, you're a dragon anyway. You're not even a snake. I'm saying that though
Yeah.
to say like, what do we like and what don't we like?
Mm-hmm.
What are we?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do some more research on some snakes because you'll probably fuck with them.
Okay, that's
Because a snake is a dragon without wings, and a dragon is a snake with wings. It's a serpent. It's a winged serpent.
mm-hmm.
So there's an elevation to it. But
Yeah.
I feel like
But it's from the
the
same.
correlation and connection between snakes and dragons may deal with maybe like earthly and airy elements.
Okay.
The serpent, the snake, it can't fly, so it's bound to the earth. So it might be an earth element.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon, which can do two things, and it's part of three things. It's more elevated, like I said. It can breathe fire, and it can fly. So it deals with like fire and air elements.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things. So if that's the connection, then you deal with the serpent, you deal with the snake, so you can understand the dragon.
That's what you're saying.
You understand, and that goes into white people. That goes into things that you aren't really fond of. You go into it to understand it. And then once you get, that's the thing. So when we deal with like the ladder of life, so they deal with like wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. These are the top three pairs or tiers of the ladder of consciousness of the self, of the body. And it's like, I think understanding, and it's funny because when I first was getting into it, I was like, knowledge is power. Da, da, da. And knowledge and having a wise dome or having wisdom is beautiful. But to understand it means to feel it and have an understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can have knowledge of it, meaning like, I read it and, now I know and I can say it to you. And then, or like, let's say I've been studying dreaming and how we're dreaming, and how to dream. And I've been reading up on it, so I have a certain knowledge that I can talk about it. Like, this means this, and this is a term for this, and this is knowledge that I have of it. Then having wisdom is kind of, for me, pulling away and asking instead of trying to give so much information, is to ask the person who was sharing the information, like, well, what have you learned from it? Da-da. Because I'm a master student. I'm always looking to gain more knowledge. So I don't need to spew what I've learned so much. That's for me. I'm more so like wanting to learn, what have you learned? And we're sharing that. And then understanding is like having the experience of it and feeling that understanding. And wisdom, pulling back to wisdom is getting all the knowledge. So all the things that's positive about it, all the things negative about it. So I'm giving you another thing I've been really getting into is I've been getting into like a lot of my people's stance towards anti-slavery and shit, and where they were at and who they were really, who they were really to like, and not proudly, ignorantly saying, well, my people were fighting anti-slavery and we all Haitian and da da da. I'm just using that as an example, but really understanding and going deeper, like, are Haitians really Haitians? Are they actually really slaves? So that's a whole other concept. So like the thing that I've stumbled on is that, you know, we are so vast that, you know, we are more than what we think we are. And I'm going to use that in terms of the what do you call it? The Atlantic slave trade. That concept, it's so limited to what we think we are. We think we're just in that spectrum. And I'm like, we were in so many places for it. That was just a part of it. Meaning, let's just say, we used to throw it out there like we were already on the land of the United States before it was the United States, before slaves came here. Yeah. Meaning that, let's say me and you was chatting in Kentucky. Yeah. You see some boats and shit. Like, oh, what these people doing over here? Meaning, we're already here. We chilling right now. We see some people pull up. We're like, where are you, in Jersey right now, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like, yo, Cleon, I see some motherfucking boats pulling up. Where you at? She's like, right? And then 1,000 years later, our ancestors are like, well, my great uncle Cleon came from Brazil. His people, but honestly, you were sitting in your crib. You were already here. I'm being mad long-winded with it, right? I'm being long-winded and animated, but what I'm trying to say is that we don't really know.
Exactly, because that's their history. We could have been here already. They are free Black people that came.
Not even we could have. I know that we were. Not even free Black people. Before there was a term called free Blacks. Before we were freely Black, we were already
I see what you're saying.
There.
I see what you're saying. I get it what you're saying exactly. We were already here because we were everywhere. So whoever's coming, I see what you're saying.
Whoever come here and came here and we fought and then we lost the war and all the things that may have transpired.
Somebody writes something that's
and then also we have to take into account with our own people's leading people here. Our own people could have been us in past lives. I really be having that. I think that's what I've been getting into. Like, that's what I mean. Like, exposing, like, who's to say my ancestors wasn't the ones that was snitching? You know, so I've been getting into these freedom fighters called the Maroons of Dominica. And they are freedom fighters from my mother's land, right? And I'm mad hype about them and shit. Like, oh my God, it's getting mad excited. Like, right? like really, like, they got statues and shit and all these things that I'm stumbling on. And then I'm also hearing these things about them that they may have been contracted from the British, you know, to like, they were like probably like slave catchers at the same time. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, oh my God, could they have done that as well? How could they do that to their people? And then I'm thinking, like, I have to find these things that make the story full and complete. And then once the story is full and complete, then you know, you continue to work. I mean, I feel like the story is never really full and complete. So full and complete for me is more so like where I've learned enough and then I can share it back. Like, this is what I've been learning. This is what I've been doing. This is what I've been like working on. I've been working on textiles. This is what I've been working on. These type of textiles I've been working on. I'm working on like really getting into my parents, you know, because I'm really New York and my parents are really not, but they are because they've been here mad long. But they're not. There's something so not New York about them, even though all I've known them to be is New Yorkers, even though they are clearly from different countries in language, in culture, in food, in the way in which they carry themselves. However, I've known them to be here in New York. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know them to be amongst their people in their homeland, where my father be like, I want to go home. And I'm like, where? Canton Avenue? Flatbush? And he's like, no, home. And home to him is Nigeria. When my father be saying, talking about like, old me, he's like, I'm going home. I'm like, you are home. What are you talking about? We home. But when he talks about his concept of where he was when he was a child. So those are the things that interest me. Those are the things that have been really interesting to me. Yeah, it's been a lot of that. It's been a lot of like bloodline shit.
I see what you're saying about, like, now I understand what you've been saying deeper about exposure. Those type of exposures, really getting down to your legacy, your lineage. They're trying to get as much of the story about who you are and where you're from as possible. Not in, like, I guess, transmogrifying that and rearranging that and making it alchemy into these things that you produce into the world. And that's where it's coming from. I hope people realize I've been listening. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to get it, because I truly, genuinely believe the things that you create, they're not regular. And I know they came from a different sort of place because you're a different sort of person. It's like people want to, like, you're an artist, right? An artist is artist, like purity in it. And people want to see the things, they want to get the things, they want to buy the things, but they don't want to know what type of mind and soul and spirit generates it. And I just really appreciate you sharing the time and like sharing like
I appreciate your genuine interest. And I've always loved the concept of your curiosity. And that's what I mean by like master learners. Because master learners and master teachers in a nutshell. And that's what it is.
People are always striving for something that's different, something that sparks them, something that makes them move, feels alive, feels like they're being enlightened, but they don't want to go through the steps that you've taken to get there. And I'm like, I just want to hear as much as possible, because I don't think I got all the answers. You gave me things today, but I can go back and think deeper on. When I listen back to this, I want to get more gems and more jewels, because there's no way to do anything. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. There's just living and being. And the way how true and honest and intentional and just connected your way of being is. It's just so honest. There's a purity to it that I hope people understand when they listen back to this. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for like hitting me up. I appreciate. I love this series. I love what you're doing and what you're pulling for people. That honesty and pureness, and you have that energy that people feel, at home with you. Your smile be all like wide and shit all the time. Like every time I see you, because you mad big. You like to talk guy and shit. So people, it's always refreshing. It's always a refreshing feeling to just have that camaraderie and like that energy and that scope, and to see my reflection in you. So like when you're like, I want to learn, I'm like, I want to learn too. What's going on? How'd you do your book? I'm so happy for you. Like, what's going on with the book?
It's important, you know what I mean? Like, we're all just lights. You know what I mean? We're all just lights trying to get through the quote unquote darkness. And I just think if we all can just like make our light shine brighter, a bunch of like all gang up with all our lights, that light will overpower the darkness. And that's what I genuinely believe in. I just want this space, this platform that I'm creating to be that light, or at least.
And get this, be that darkness as well.
Yeah, you gotta have the duality.
Not even just having duality. The darkness, the darkness in you is what gives you light. Like, in I gotta when you like, well, I'm gonna find the light. I want to be the light. I'm like, be the darkness. Be the darkness. Because in darkness, everything is born. In your own deep thoughts, when nobody can see you, when nobody knows, when nobody's listening, when it's just you and yourself, that's what darkness is. When it's just you and your thoughts. All this thing that we're talking about right now, this is lightness. This is light. I'm being light. But when I go to sleep at night, when you go to sleep at night, when we plant our seeds into the depths of our dreams, that's darkness. So be the darkness. Be the darkness. Be that as fully as you can. And then the darkness will give you light. Because the light is what we're gonna do in the day. The darkness is what we're gonna be at night. You know what I'm saying? The darkness is what we are at night. The light is what we want to shine on, but the darkness is what we are. The darkness, you know, the lightness is what we think we are, is what we want to be. The darkness is what we are. So be the darkness, be yourself. And then the light, be the darkness. That's my motto. That's one of my mottos.
I'm gonna think deeper back on that because you said some things that made a whole lot of sense, to be honest with you. And I gotta on that because, like,
and what I mean by darkness is, like, think about it: a seed in a pot. When you plant a seed,
where does it go? In the dark, in the ground.
It has to go. It has to be in darkness. It has to, in order to germinate, in order for us to see how beautiful it is. Mm-hmm. The only time we see the seed is when it's in the light. Afterward, after all that shit it had to go through. It had to be the darkness before it could be the light. And that's what I mean by that. Use that analogy.
That's a fact.
The seed in the pod, what you plant at night, what you are with yourself when you go to sleep, that's access, that's a darkness. But the darkness is the beauty of everything. And see, this strays away from who we are as a people, because who we are as a people is a product of that. That's why we reflect the Most High. We're the most melanin. You know why? Because we come from that. We come from darkness. And our melanin is what light looks like.
Go in.
There's no way we could have been melanated like this if we didn't come from the oasis.
Go in.
If we didn't come from the womb. Where's the womb from? What's the womb?
Go in.
Darkness.
We try to get
you don't see the baby until it cries. And the baby's crying to let you know that it's in the light. But it lets you know where it comes from. And it's tight. Because we spend most of our life trying to get back in the womb.
Yo.
Go into yourself.
Do you see what I'm saying when I say you dropping jewels? I hope people are listening, not acting like they can't hear it. I hope people are listening. This is different. This is not everyday knowledge. You know what I mean? I hope people are listening. You just said something very, very important right there. I'm going to think deeper about it. I'm listening. I just want you to know. I appreciate the time. You left me with a bomb, right? I appreciate the time. I hope people will actually pay attention and get to the end, but you left with jewels. Facts. And I appreciate it. Thank you. Seriously.
I appreciate you. Ooh.
Appreciate
Boom.
You.
Boom. Hit me up.
I will.
I love you and stuff. I love you, yo. Thank you so much.
And thank you for just supporting everybody and, keeping the team strong because you've always been consistent.
You already know. Thank you, baby.
We'll
talk to you soon. Later.
Later.